The rain is gone!
Happy Monday! The rain is completely gone. The clouds have opened up and the heavens have shined its sunny rays right into my face, and I am really blind and I did not put sunscreen on. But that's completely okay because all that's gonna be fixed by making some morning coffee. So let's get to it. So before we start this Q&A, I really gotta get the old noggin stimulated. So today I'm making some pour over coffee, and this right here inside this magical what is this bin, essentially it's trying to store the coffee, but inside this thing is these are beans from Ethiopia, from a coffee shop called Stereoscope. Is it Stereoscope? Stereoscope. Let me double check. This is Stereoscope. Yeah, it's from Stereoscope. I checked. I was right. So Stereoscope Coffee is based over in Los Angeles, over in Echo Park, where I used to grow up, and they got some really amazing beans that they roast. So I'm about to make some, and then we'll get this video started. So, not at my usual spot, but I thought I'd change up the sceneries a little bit, getting some pretty nice natural lighting coming here. We got all of our plant friends around us, and I got my delicious Ethiopia coffee that I brew. And now I'm ready to tackle some questions. So these questions are from pre-nursing students. I want to give a shout out to my friend Julia, who works directly with a lot of first gens, 1.5 gen, second gen, students who are very interested in nursing. So shout out to Julia for doing so. So let's just get right into it, shall we? Okay, so the first question is, what is the best resources for internships or volunteer opportunities for pre-nursing students? And are internships and grades important? Because even as a new second year student, I'm stressing about trying to get all A's. So this is a question, this is a 2-question point. So, all right, we're going right into the heavy hitters. So, best resources for internships or volunteer opportunities for pre-nursing students. So when I was a pre-nursing student at a, let's back up here a little bit. So my trajectory into nursing is a little bit unique, and I'm sure a lot of non-traditional students can relate, but I was coming in from going to nursing as a second bachelor, right? So when I had to retake some of these prerequisite classes, in terms of finding internships or volunteer opportunities, there were a lot of different sources that I had to really tap into. First of all, my goal at the time was to work at a hospital, which means that for me to really get fully exposed, or not really fully exposed, but to get somewhat exposed to the hospital setting, I had to start looking for internships or volunteer opportunities at a hospital. So I spent about maybe a good summer break volunteering at the hospital. I was working in the candy shop. Okay, that was a 50 cents reference. But no, really, I was working at a candy shop. I was working at the gift shop, and so the internship that I applied to, this was through Sutter's Health. Okay, Sutter's Health over in the East Bay, Berkeley area. And one of their opportunities was that you can have the chance of volunteering at either a surgery center. I think this was mostly in perioperative, or you can volunteer, on the floor. But in order to get to that point, you need to put in, I think, maybe 2 or 3 months volunteering at like the gift shop, or volunteering at a meet and greet when patients come in and you sort of escort them where they need to go, or you can just help to kind of facilitate, you know, when they're lost and they need some direction. So things of that sort. So it was a really great opportunity for me. One, it lets me just feel comfortable of stepping into a hospital setting. Okay, so just being in that facility helps to make me feel comfortable. Two, I was meeting a lot of nurses and physicians assistants and radio techs and x-ray techs and all different types of staff members coming into the gift shop, because a lot of times they were buying candy. And so I use that opportunity to strike up a conversation. So I would see a healthcare staff, you know, they'll be wearing their badge, they'll be saying RN, and I'll just, you know, kind of strike up some small conversations and say, hey, I see that you're a nurse, like, where do you work at? Oh, do you like your job? Or, oh, where do you work? You know, how long you've been working there? So it gave me an opportunity to just talk to people, and, you know, if they're willing to respond and talk, then I would kind of carry that conversation a little bit further. So I did that for a couple of weeks, I think 1 or 2 months, I forgot. And then I was able to work in the perioperative, and my goal was to, you know, kind of push patients on the wheelchair and kind of get them all set up. So it was a really cool experience, and it's something definitely that you can put on your resume. Now, with that said, you know, I don't know how things are with COVID. I think things are a little bit more restricted, but if you see any local hospitals around your place that you're very interested, definitely look up, sign up, and that's the best way to get your foot into kind of volunteering in a hospital. Another thing that you can do is, you know, look at your bulletin board at your school facility. Sometimes they'll put, you know, job postings or volunteer postings that are related to nursing or any particular healthcare that you're interested in. And that's another good way to get your foot in the door too. Talking to your professors, you know, they might know a friend. They're just a bountiful of resources that you can tap into. So really, it's all about making connections. And I know it's difficult when you're just sort of trying to navigate different places and you really don't know where to start. But just believe me, just keep looking, keep Googling. And let's say, okay, this is a little bit off topic, but let's say if you can't get a volunteer experience in a hospital, that's completely okay. I know a lot of my friends who are wonderful nurses who haven't had the opportunity to even work or volunteer in a hospital, or not even work as a CNA. They had literally very minimal clinical experience, but they work in a lot of service type jobs. You know, some of them were waiters or waitresses, or some of them were baristas. And I think I mentioned before in previous video, but a lot of these types of jobs kind of had similar type of flow as a nurse, right? I'm not diminishing one role versus the other, but really it's all about, you know, patient satisfaction, customer satisfaction, learning how to multitask, learning how to prioritize, learning how to time management. A lot of those things in service jobs is very reflective of nursing. So, you know, if you see a hip coffee shop that you like to work, check it out. All right. Wow, that was only the first question. I think the second question was asking about, like, are internships and grades important? Yes and no, right? Yes and no. You don't necessarily need to have an internship. And again, this is very institution based, okay? Does it help? Of course it helps. Having an internship helps. But also not having an internship and having other important or interesting organizations that you volunteer, it just shows that, you know, you're not just strictly focused on grades, but as an admission committee, this is me tapping into their mind, okay? But I would like to think, like, if I was sitting on that chair and I'm trying to pick out which student I want to be in my school, I want to pick somebody who is, you know, compassionate, empathetic, somebody who's really going above and beyond and being very much involved in the community. So for me, those are important criteria when I'm selecting somebody who wants to be part of the nursing profession. Are grades important? Equally, yes. Grades is super important. Nursing is super competitive. So a grade is sort of like your ticket into nursing school, right? It's, I wasn't a straight A student. I had, some A's, mostly B's, and some C's, okay? But I was able to get in because I didn't rely solely on my grade. I rely on my life experience, right? That was what really propelled me into getting into a nursing school. I need to take a coffee break. It's already been. Hopefully that's answered your question. The next question is, how is interview structured? What are some questions we might get? Okay, so I'm assuming these are questions about nursing school. So from my experience, there were some schools I got accepted that didn't really ask me questions. Like there wasn't really a panel interview per se. There were questions like in the application that I had to type out, right? Like, why did you want to become a nurse? Tell me a time where you were deeply involved in the community, something like that. Some questions that I did remember for the schools that I applied to that required an in-person interview, a lot of the questions are, tell me about yourself, right? Tell me about yourself. So that's an opportunity for you to kind of give your elevator pitch, right? You don't want to go too far into it because you want to save that for the meat of the question. So you kind of have to strategize what you're going to say, right? So tell me about yourself. Oh, my name is Vincent, and I'm, you want to start with the school that you went to, and then you can talk a little bit about like your family upbringing, and then somewhere there it's gonna like allow you to talk about why you want to go and become a nurse. So give your elevator pitch. Oh, and then they'll most likely ask like why you want to become a nurse or what got you interested in the nursing profession. That's where you can talk about your interest started from an interaction that you had with a patient, or you grew up with a family member that was in a nursing, or you were a caretaker for somebody. So that's the part that you really, really want to shine. So they're gonna ask you about why you want to become a nurse. They're also, potentially might be asking about your volunteer experiences, okay? Now, again, I do want to say that you don't want to list out every little thing on your resume. It's important that you talk about what's on your resume, but usually during these interviews, they'll have your resume and they don't need you to laundry list everything as you're verbatimly saying it. But you want to go a little bit more in detail, and you really want to pick out, which community experiences or internship that really stood out the most to you. Whichever you felt that was going to highlight your individuality as a potential nursing student, you want to focus on that. Another question they might ask is, oh, they love conflict. So they're going to ask like, hey, so let's say you are taking a test and you notice your classmate is cheating. What are you going to do, right? How are you going to answer that question? I don't want to give off the answer, but if they were going to throw you that question, these are the things that they want to hear you say. They want to say, are you honest? Are you transparent? Are you willing to escalate the situation? Are you fair, right? Or do you believe in fairness, right? Because you want to make sure that your nursing student comrade gets the same treatment and not just one individual who's reaping all the benefits and not putting in the work. So they really want to see how you answer these conflict questions, because believe me, when you get into a nursing job interview, there is going to be a lot of conflict questions that you have to be able to answer, because they want to see if you're somebody who is safe. And by safe, I mean, can you practice safely? Are you honest? Are you potentially a risk to the hospital? Are you potentially a risk to the facility? If not, then prove it. Tell us that you're willing to practice safely by being transparent, willing to use your chain of command. So these are some of the questions that was asked upon me, and believe me, it took me by surprise because I did not anticipate these questions at all. But you can do it. I believe in you. Next question. There's a lot of questions. Are there free or cheap resources to help us with the T's and how did you prepare for it. Okay, the T-test. So the T-test is a sort of a standardized test that a lot of pre-nursing students have to take before they get into the nursing school, and they're based on some type of percentage. Honestly, it's been a long time since I've taken the T-test. Did I study for the T-test? Yeah, I studied for it. Did I thought it was like the ends of all means test? No. And let me tell you why, because at the time that I was preparing for the T-test, I was actually concurrently taking anatomy and physiology. And the thing about the T-test, now I don't know what it's like in 2021, I would assume it's still the same, but the thing about the T-test is that it's pretty heavily focused on human anatomy and physiology. And thankfully, I didn't have to study too much on those two subjects because I was already taking those courses. But if you're not taking those classes at the same time, I highly recommend you kind of brush up on those human anatomy and physiology, because it's pretty much the meat and potato of the test, right? What did I use to study? Well, I believe I was using a book that I found on Amazon called T's Mastery. They have a lot of questions that you can practice, right? You can do the math portions, the reading comprehension portions. Those are the things that you also want to focus to as well. So T Mastery, I'm sure there's a lot of YouTube videos out there. Like if you type in T-test practice questions, you'll be able to kind of see some of the things that you might see when you take the test. So definitely look into those resources too as well. What are the pros and cons of applying to programs at a state? That's a very good question, because that is something that I thought about too. So I apply to an out-of-state school for many reasons. One, I didn't get into a school in California. It was very highly competitive, and I was at a time where I applied to almost every single school in California, and I did not get accepted at all, which means that I had to wait for another application time to open. Or let me back up. If I were to apply to California again, I would have to wait for a full year, and I didn't have that patience. I couldn't wait for another full year. I felt like I was just killing time doing so. So I had to really think about, all right, it's time to step out and apply to out of state. So I applied to out of state, and I got accepted to actually 3 different schools out of state of California. And I specifically chose Portland because it was closest to California versus all the other 2 institutions that I applied to. And the pros of going to an out-of-state school for me was that I didn't really know anybody out of state, which means it helps to minimize the distraction that I might potentially get if I were to apply to a school in California, if that makes sense, right? Because, I'm closer to my family, I'm closer to my friends, and I want to spend a lot of time with them. But, that might inhibit my study time, because I know my challenges is that I'm easily distracted. So I need to hermit myself by moving hours away from home. So that's the pros. Of course, the con is, you have to really be realistic and know that it's going to take some time for you to acclimate to your new living situation, which might potentially, add some more baggage into your study time. Because for me, one of the things that I had challenged when I moved to a different state was that I didn't really have a sense of community, which in turns affected the way that I study. It affected my mood, it affected my health, my mental health specifically. A lot of these things that we don't think about when we're in nursing school, because all we want is just study, study, study. But it's important that we apply these self-care techniques upon us so that we can become the best nursing student that we can be. So, again, it's all about just knowing your challenges, be very realistic, be very realistic of your time, be very realistic of what are your limitations, and also learning to seek out other people for help. And for me, that took a bit of a long time to fully grasp and utilize. So again, the pros and cons are definitely there. Of course, it really depends on the school that you apply to. But let's say if you're applying to out of state and you're a California resident, there might potentially be a much more expensive because you might potentially be paying out-of-state tuition. For me, I was going to a private school, so it doesn't really matter whether I was Oregonian or Californian because we all pay the same, right? You also want to look into, like, if you are a non-traditional student, they might have different scholarships or tuition break that you might be eligible for. For me, I was transferring all my pre-nursing credit into a nursing school, so that helps to alleviate some of the costs that I would have to pay if I took my pre-nursing classes on top of the nursing classes on that school. So that's another pro too as well. So again, I would highly recommend, if you are in kind of like a fork between two roads and you're trying to figure out whether you should stay here in California or out there in a different state, just really make a laundry list, write out all the pros and cons, and see where all your values come together. Y'all doing okay? All right, you with me? Cool. All right, so next question is, I am thinking about trying to get an ADN, so an associate degree, nursing, at a local community college. Will getting a BSN really make a huge difference in the long run? Ooh, that's a very good question. Very good question. Okay, so does it matter if you get an associate degree of nursing or should you get a bachelor's of science of nursing? I will say this. A lot of hospitals now, they tend to favor BSN, specifically here in California. They tend to hire those with BSN. Now, does it make you a better nurse than an associate degree nurse? Absolutely not. Zippo. I've met so many great nurses who are LPNs, who are associate degree nurses, vocational nurses. They're great nurses. There's just a different scope of practice. Now, if the question is, what is the cheapest route? If I were to go back and do it again, I would probably get my associate degree of nursing first and then apply to a Bachelor of Science of Nursing bridge program and get my BSN a year after. And that actually saves a lot more money because a lot of online classes are a lot cheaper than what I was going through. So the answer is yes, it can benefit, because if you're actually thinking about, applying to grad school, you definitely need that BSN as a bridge into your MSN. So that was one of the other reasons why I chose to do the BSN route, is because I know that I want to continue to further my education. So that's just something to keep in mind, okay? Do nurses have specialties too? Yes, they do. There are so much specialties out there in nursing, which makes nursing such a wonderful profession to get into, because you can try pretty much a lot of things, okay? Telemetry is a specialty, believe it or not. ICU is a specialty, oncology is a specialty, what else? Cardiac rehabilitation is a specialty. Specialty. There's a lot of specialties in nursing. How do you get a good nursing education / training if you do not have the financial means for all the tests, fees, etc.? That's a very good question. These are really good questions. Wow. It's unfortunate that, if you come from a low socioeconomic background, yeah, there is some truth in there that if you don't have the financial necessities to be able to get the preparation that you need to get into nursing school, it might hinder the quality. Now, again, I was fortunate enough to have families to support me. I was also working a part-time job too, so I really had to hustle and seek out help to get the necessary training that you need. But again, it's very individualized. You may be a super smart student who may not have all the money in the world. And, but your study method is learning things solely on your own, and that's your way. But let's say if you are somebody who, also come from a low socioeconomic, who needs a lot of help, then yeah, that might be challenging if the programs that you're applying to help you get into a nursing program may be out of your budget. Then the answer is, or the question is, what help do I need? Again, seek out financial organizations that are willing to help out people like in your shoe. I know I had to ask for EOPS, which is a financial organization in the community college that I was at the time. They really helped to provide me textbooks, testing prep, basically all these different things, and they helped to subsidize that. So that was another way for me to use too as well. Also look into other organizations like pre-nursing organizations that may have subsidized programs to help you get these exam preparation, right? So look into your resources on your school. It's a huge abundancy that you can tap into. As a nurse, do you stress out or get overwhelmed with the work you have to do at the time? Yeah, it's stressful, and I'm not saying that because it's not true. It's entirely true, and it really depends on where you work, and it also depends on where you are in your nursing journey. So, as some of you already know, I am taking a bit of a hiatus from bedside nursing because I needed time to just recuperate, right? And really kind of focus on things that I feel may help me to get back into the bedside nursing, right? So what are some strategies that you think will help you cope with the stresses that you have in your life? Whether it's in family life, academic life, work life, As you get into nursing school, you'll start to learn that there are a lot of different self-care techniques that you have to learn to utilize. Because by then, once you get into the nursing profession, especially as a new grad, you're gonna feel that the stress that you have in school is very, very different, if not, and this is personally speaking, much more complicated as a new grad nurse, because you're literally taking care of people's life. Their life is in your hand. I'm not even like metaphorically speaking, like it's literally is in your hand. And you can take a lot of that stress when you come from home. So you really have to learn to develop these certain coping mechanisms, and definitely, seek out therapy if you need it, seek out your friends, your nursing friends, your family, people who you entirely trust in your circle to, take part of that. So yes, it is stressful once you step into the real world, but it is manageable with the right self-care and the right people. What advice do you have for us trying to get into the nursing profession, and what are your studying habits that you found useful? So advice. I would say that before you start applying to...
I'm not sure I understand.
I don't either. Thanks, Siri. Some advice is before you are really gung-ho about applying to that nursing school, really do your diligent research, okay? Contact the person who represents that school. For me, at the time I was really interested in applying to Samuel Merritt, which is a school over in Oakland. I send them emails. I ask them if we can schedule a time where we can just sit one-on-one, and I have all these questions that I really want to ask. So definitely look into the schools that you're really interested in. If you even have the bandwidth, see if you can contact students who are currently at that school and get their honest feedback about that, okay? So that's another advice I would say, is just do your diligent research. Also, be very realistic that can you afford the school? Nursing school is expensive. It is an investment. I'm still paying my nursing loans, right? So ask yourself, can you afford this, all right? Another thing you want to ask is, what are the clinicals like? I know a lot of times, especially my classmates, they weren't very lucky of the clinical options that they were able to get in nursing school. Now, do clinical opportunities during nursing school, is it a make it or break it for you to get a job in the nursing world? Absolutely not. I know people who have never even stepped foot in the ICU and was able to work in the ICU as a new grad because they applied to a new grad ICU program, right? Which caused them to have to move to a very, very remote place. But that's besides the point. So again, but if you feel like having those clinical experiences as a student, as a nursing student, is very important to you, then ask, the admissions committee or the reps, or I don't know the title for it, but ask them if, what are the clinical selections are like. Do students usually get their first choice? Do students respond very well from it? Do they able to get a lot of hands-on experience through their clinical facility? So that's another question to ask too. Studying habits. What are some ways that I found very useful? Okay, so when I first started in my first semester, I thought studying alone, solely alone, was the best way to do it. But let me tell you this. I had to learn to step out of my introvertness by trusting in my classmates. So I had to study. I learned that studying with a group of people helped to optimize my studying processes. That makes sense. Now, with that said, it's very important of who you decide to study with, okay? Because if you may know from your pre-nursing experience, sometimes when you study in a group of classmates, you tend to talk about things not relating to studying. And that can also eat up your time too. So I would say that yes, studying with a partner or partners is very important, but also be very mindful of who those partners are so that you don't get into other conversations outside of whatever it is you're studying. Another technique that I use when I am studying by myself is the Pomodoro technique, okay? So if you don't know what that is, you can download an app actually, but essentially you're setting a timer for yourself. So let's say if I have to really dig deep into pharmacology for like 1 hour, I'll set a timer for 1 hour. For that 1 hour, I would do nothing other than studying. And then I'll have a 5 to 10 minute break of doing whatever the heck I want to do, whether it's social media, whether it's going to grab some more coffee, bathroom, grab some snack, right? And then I'll jump right back into it and set another timer, because that helps to keep things organized. Because if you're not setting a timer, you can feel completely like sucked into studying. It just feels like you're not going anywhere, and it just feels forever, and you lose track of time, and yada yada yada. It's not a very productive way. So the Pomodoro technique, I highly, highly, highly recommend you to do that. Okay? What future technology will be applied in the field that you see would be a great benefit to your practice? What future technology? Ooh, that's a really good one. So I was having a talk with my coworkers, and so right now I'm kind of doing this seasonal job where I work at a flu vaccine clinic, and a lot of times our patients are young. They're pediatric age, right, 3 and up. And I remember when I was a kid, I hate getting shots, right? So I remember coming across this video. I forgot where I got it, but essentially kids were using like virtual reality, like Oculus, where they would wear it, and then they would see, it becomes like a game to help prep them up to get their shot. So what kids will see, they're in this like virtual reality world where they finally meet like this like superhuman power person, and they're like saying like, hey, now you're about to get superpower, but you're gonna feel like a little shock in your arm, and that is gonna give you the power that you need to defeat the germs. So that's like one technology that I hope to see normalize as healthcare continues to progress, because I think it's completely fantastic to just see that level of creativity with healthcare. So that's one technology I can see. Another thing that I see, again, this is like relating to my field, is a lot of different vital signs monitors from like a consumer perspective to help them be more proactive in gathering, their blood pressure, their heart rate, their EKG. Like we have a lot of smartwatches that are able to detect, atrial fibrillations or any weird heart rhythms. I think that's really cool to see that from a consumer usage. There's so many different technologies out there. I don't know where to start, but believe me, if you just Google a bunch of them, you'll see there's quite a bit. Is it hard to find jobs? I heard some people say it's hard to find nursing jobs. Yes and no. Yes, here in California, specifically in the Bay Area, it is highly saturated of nurses here. So you are a little guppy in a vast ocean. Now again, it depends also where in California you are. It also depends on what facility you're applying to. And even more importantly, it depends on what position you're applying to. So it's very difficult. I know for me, when I first started as a new grad nurse, I applied to so many different hospitals in the Bay Area and I got Zippo, which means that I had to apply out of state. Can you get in the nursing field without a nursing degree? I guess the question, so can I get into the nursing field without a nursing degree? Now, so you can't be a nurse without a nursing degree, if that's what you mean, but you can get into similar type of, let me back it up. There are many different types of jobs that is kind of related to being a nurse, and that is to be a caretaker. Now, if you want to become a nurse tech or a certified nurse assistant or an ER tech, you don't necessarily need to have a nursing degree to do those jobs, to be in that position. You just have to take some type of, training program, and then, you apply and you can be part of that. But yes, you do have to have your RN license to work legally as a nurse. Does becoming a CNA help your chances of getting into a nursing program? So that's a very common question that I see and hear people ask is, do I need to be a CNA to become a nurse? No, you don't need to be a CNA to become a nurse. Will it help you to become a nurse? Absolutely, yes. Any experience is a good experience. I would say CNA is probably one of the best opportunities that you can get yourself involved in to see what it's like to work directly with patients. And specifically if you're like a CNA 2, that allows you to work in a hospital setting. You'll be interacting with patients, you'll be interacting with nurses, sometimes physicians. You'll be able to see a lot of that flow. As a CNA, when you're working as a CNA, you're gonna be taking a lot of patients, and it's gonna help with your time management, because I will say this, when people think that when they become a nurse, they're not gonna do a lot of like daily CNA tasks. That is not true. Just because you're a nurse does not mean that you're not gonna be changing the patient, feeding the patient, all these different things. To be a good nurse, you need to be very comfortable in doing these things because you're taking care of people, you're taking care of their dignity, their health. And I would say that when I was working at the bedside, if it wasn't for my CNAs, I would be completely devastated because they are really the bread and butter of keeping the unit healthy, keeping the flow going well. Because if your CNA is crashing, you're gonna crash too, because you're basically a team. You're a solidified team, right? They are the glue of what makes your job. It makes your patient safe. It makes, you need them. Okay, they are the heartbeat of it all. So shout out to all my CNAs. You guys deserve all the love that you need. All right, and that is all for the questions for my pre-nursing student friends. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what you're gonna get yourself into. Believe me, I know I was a pre-nursing student not too long ago, so I understand the reality, the complications, the confusion, so many different resources thrown at you, and it's really hard to start where. So hopefully this Q&A video helps to navigate you in your journey of becoming a nursing student and then hopefully a strong nurse. So thanks for watching. Share this video if you know somebody who is also struggling, or somebody who's just even curious about what it's like to navigate through this. And other than that, until next time, take care of yourself. It's getting colder. Happy Halloween, soon to be Happy Halloween. And until next time, happy nursing.